scary because they all want to be best friends, and I don't know how to handle that. But it's a praise that they are learning, and they are coming to my desk nonstop and texting me nonstop with questions. It's great. But I'm inviting them here.
Okay.
But it's just 3 people with 3 families all at once is very overwhelming. It just went boom. So
Careful what you ask for.
yeah.
If you're
So
effective at.
their names are Rob,
Okay.
Patrice, and Jenna. And they've all watched the show now, at least one episode.
Jenna, J-E or
N-N-A, J-E-N-N-A. And they've all watched the show. They're very challenged, but they're very excited. And,
if they're challenged, just give them a couple more weeks. It's going to get really fun for some of them. As in, we're going to...
Especially because one of them is obsessed with the Antichrist in a bodily form. Like, that's all they think about. And I was like...
Yeah, give Joe a little while to get used to me before you go on to that one. Yeah.
But I shared the same quote with them 3 times this week, and I keep saying it over and over again. Texts without context is pretext for whatever you want.
Yes.
And it's been awesome.
Okay. You won't let me put you down, but her ear is still bugging her.
Of course, my business.
I got that down already. Yeah. I'm pretty smart about that.
I'm down the truck. No transmission. No. Ouch.
What else do we have?
My sisters, Pam and Carolyn.
Do you have something, Kyle?
Oh, my mom and Eric.
Same as usual?
Traveling mercies for Mom and Joe, Ashley, and the boys. They're going to see John.
And blessings on her that she'll be able to straighten things out for her brother there.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. And also, John is trying to be transferred to a much closer prison where she could see him a lot more often. And so
Yeah.
prayers for that.
yeah, that'd be awesome.
All right. I sent you a link via text. I don't know if we can get it onto the YouTube feed, but it is the show notes for today, not Sabbath study notes. I don't know if you can or not. I just sent it to you just in case.
Yes, I can work that. I'll have to tap finger it, but I'll work it.
Well, you don't have to, brother, but I just thought if we could do it, it might be useful.
It's okay. It's good.
Anything else? I sent it to her too.
Yeah, that's still good. Oh, did you get it?
Have we started with the telecast yet, the broadcast?
Yes.
All right, so we're on. Morning, everybody. We're just doing prayer and praise lists. So bear with us. We'll be going in a minute. I can't get all these little kiddos in their seats on time. We will have to, if we're going to start doing this regularly, we will have to start working a little harder to be here at 11 for the sake of anybody who's watching. That's just,
Yes, sir.
well, you know, that's just one of those things. We got to, if that starts to take and anybody's watching it, then we'll move toward being a little. Hebrews run a half hour behind.
Yeah.
Well, then they'll miss the class because I don't.
Well,
Sit out there on the couch.
in the Mormon church, we call that Mormon Standard Time.
Mormon
Oh, yeah.
Standard Time.
Yeah.
But we're not Mormons.
That's a half an hour late.
Well, if you're Catholic, you dang sure don't want to tell Monsignor you're going to be a half hour late. You'll be sent to the Jesuits and they'll have their rulers ready. Anything else, folks? All righty. We're going to get going here today.
I do have one more.
Yo.
We need to discuss Christmas with my parents.
Ooh.
Hey, that sounds coming up for me too. They just got a new Christmas tree yesterday.
His mom has been very snarky.
Like from last
Jesus fallen hard.
What we're going to do today might help a lot. like I said, we'll get going on that. I did for those of you who have been following the show on that I do every day, I did a Sabbath study version of the show notes for us today. And it's up on our Sabbath study Facebook page. Where else did we post it? I know we're putting it up on the YouTube now. And I have no other way to get it to everybody in bulk except have Deborah add it to the prayer and praises when she emails everybody. Yeah. Yeah, if you're not on the email list, we need to get your email. But I think I've got 9 pages today that I printed up. And the very first page is a little handy-dandy, nifty little thing that tells you all your Sabbaths and where you find them in your scriptures. And we're going to go over all of this here in just a minute. But first, I just want to, Father, I thank you for this day, and I thank you for the time to come together as your people. I thank for the fact that we can do so still relative safety in this nation. We know that there are parts of this country where that's not true anymore. We knew this was coming. We beg you to please keep your hand of protection around this part of the country where we live and around our congregation. Ask that you accept our prayers and our praises. Handle all of the concerns we have for our friends and family and our neighbors. Know that we can trust you in how you handle all of that. Your infinite wisdom will take care of it according to your will in perfect timing. Help us to just be patient, watch and see how you work in our lives. And then I just ask you to send your spirit to be with us today as we study your word, guard us against error, and help us to open our eyes and our minds so that we understand better. And then more importantly, Father, teach us how to put it into our lives and to teach it to others if and when you present us with the opportunity to do so. I ask all of this in Yeshua's name. Morning, brother. We got to get Richard and Evelyn's email and Sean and Bonnie's. If you're not getting our weekly emails with our classes, prayers, and praises, please see us before y'all diddy out of here today so we can get you added on. Deborah sends that out every Sabbath evening or sometimes the first day, but it's got all our prayers and praises so that you can pray specifically for people, but it'll also have any news that or links or things that we have for our own class that we need to bring up. I was asked to do a class on Sabbath, and I realized something that a lot of believers might tangentially be aware of, but they don't really pay attention to. Your feasts are part of the Sabbaths. So most people, they think Sabbath, they think, seventh day. That's yes, but there's more. And a lot of folks I've run into, they don't realize there's more. Is this thing working okay for everybody? Yeah, that's good enough. So one of the first things I did, I started hunting around on the internet. There's no sense reinventing the wheel. So I just start looking for somebody who's already done what it is I'm looking for. And I found it. Ta-da-ta-da! If and when you get a hold of the show notes, it is an interactive PDF. All the links are hot. So you'll be able to follow behind me and go to exactly where I found everything and see whether or not you're happy with the sources I cited. For those of you who are new to me, for those of you out there in internet land, just if I cite you a source doesn't mean I agree with everything in there. Usually I don't, but the source I'm going to cite you and send you to is usually grounded enough that I'm not going to nitpick them to death. So if you're ever reading through something there and then you're going like, I don't like that. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean I agree with it. It just means that I found a source that's solid enough that I felt okay and comfortable to share it with others. Just a quick edification. But before I get going in the meat of the class, what I love about this, and this is something I think that all Torah observant Sabbath keepers should keep somewhere, because it tells us this is the new moons are to be observed to set Yahweh's feasts, Exodus 12:2, Deuteronomy 16:1. The seventh day of every week is Yahweh's Sabbath of rest and a holy convocation, Exodus 23:12, 16:23. Keep the Sabbath day holy by making preparation in advance, Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11. Remove all leavened bread from all property by the 15th of Abib, Exodus 12:15. On the 15th day of Abib, we must teach our children the story of the Exodus from Egypt, Exodus 13:8. I realized that this was the first time I ever paid attention that that's actually something in Scripture. I thought it was a tradition of the Hebrews and Jews. Excuse me. It says, we must eat unleavened bread from the 15th through the 21st of Abib, Exodus 12:18. The first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Passover, is a Sabbath of rest and a holy day of convocation. Cooking may be done on a feast day, Sabbath, but not on the weekly Sabbath, Exodus 12:16. Got to be careful with that because sometimes those holy convocation Sabbaths will fall on the seventh day Sabbath, making it a double high holy day. Well, no cooking there. The seventh day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Passover again, is a Sabbath of rest and a holy convocation. That's Exodus 12:16 as well. We must count 50 days from the day after the first holy day Sabbath of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. This is counting the Omer to the Feast of Weeks, Leviticus 23, verses 15 and 16. The Feast of Weeks, Pentecost, is a Sabbath of rest and a holy convocation, Leviticus 23:21. The Feast of Trumpets is a Sabbath of rest and a holy convocation, Leviticus 23:24. The Day of Atonement is a day of complete fasting, Leviticus 16, verses 29 through 31. The Day of Atonement is a Sabbath of rest and a holy convocation, Leviticus 23, verses 27 through 32. The first day of Feast of Tabernacles is a Sabbath of rest and a holy convocation. And I forgot to bold that one. That's Leviticus 23, 34 through 35. The last great day of the Sabbath rest and a holy convocation, Leviticus 23, 36. We dwell in booths, sukkahs, temporary dwellings, during the Feast of Tabernacles, Leviticus 23:42. A sukkah may be built before the Feast of Tabernacles. Must be built before the Feast of Tabernacles, Leviticus 23:40. Sound the shofar on the Feast of Trumpets, Numbers 29:1. There are 8 days of holy convocation. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them in red. I forgot to highlight and bold everything on number 14. I'll go back and fix that PDF later. I got to reading that and I'm like, okay, I understand the Sabbath, holy day of convocation. Is that really what it says? So I'll go back into the interlinear. Yeah, it means a meeting, public reading place, whatever. So guess what I do for you in your study notes? Strong's Concordance and the NAS Concordance right there. And then I went and I found on Bible Gateway where it addresses the Holy Convocation. It means you are called together as Yahweh's people. Now, in the ancient times of Israel, that means everybody to Israel. I mean, to Jerusalem most of the time. There's 3 of them that you're supposed to come to Jerusalem. So you either get together as a community or you get together all male members at Jerusalem specific. Can't do that no more. But then again, the ordinances have not been done away with. They've been changed in the nature of how they come together and how they're observed. We now know the temple's been destroyed, but we know that part of the temple is right here in this room now. Wherever 2 or more are gathered, there's the house of Yahweh. So Yeshua will be with you because the temple is in the heart of the believers now. I didn't cite all those scriptures because that's a different lesson plan. But I did go over this for you. I don't know how to pronounce this. YouTube probably do, but the original word here for convocation is mikra, M-I-Q-R-A. Mikra, a convocation, a convoking, a reading. And in the NASB translation, assemblies, assembly, convocation, convocations, reading, summoning. So it's used 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 23 times in the scriptures. And if you go to, like on Bible Hub, if you look it up under their interlinear, it'll show you every place it's used in the scripture. And I tend to do this a lot whenever I want to know what the Hebrew tells me. And then if it's a word I've got a question with, instead of using Strong's Concordance, I'll jump over to my lexicons to make sure they jive. But yeah, that was interesting. Is that this thing doing that to us?
Point it back. Yeah, that's a big no to point the microphone at a speaker.
The problem is, it's the only way it picks y'all up.
Sound bounces, so we're gonna go.
All right.
Now to go.
Sorry about that out there. We're working through this. Appreciate all the tech guys here. It's beyond my realm of even paying attention to it. I used to be in the military, so static in the background of a radio, you learn quick, just ignore that. It's going to be there forever.
It's much better.
Okay, but I know that's sensitive to a lot of you folks, but if you, like I was a tanker, radio is always on in your ear. Static is just a constant point of your life. It's like breathing. So we're good. We're good. Anyhow, from Bible Gateway, a convocation, a holy convocation, it's a sacred assembly of Israel. Usually the word that we pronounce there is calling together, is coupled with holy, set apart. And it's first mentioned in Exodus 12:16, when we are told that the first and seventh day of the Passover feasts are holy convocations, set apart gatherings. On those days, no work was to be done. Only the preparation of food was allowed in Leviticus 23. The set feasts called holy convocations are listed. They are like Sabbath days. And it links all of this for you in this article. And this is one of the reasons I like Bible Gateway. It's really good work, and it's the quickest way I know to search the scriptures. The only problem it has is it won't help you do that with the Hebrew. You can go to the Mounts Interlinear and search the Greek in the New Testament, but it won't. So whenever you need to do Hebrew, you're going to want to bounce over to the Bible Hub, or at least I do. And it's just not as user-friendly when you're doing word searches. It's either that or I'm an idiot and I haven't learned how they want me to do it yet. But in addition to the Passover, these days are included, and it goes through what we just read. And it says the feast days are undoubtedly meant to be foretaste of the day of great day of rest for all of Yahweh's people. These days point to the day of hope when Yahweh's children will sit down with him in his kingdom. That's, in eternity. Now, why was all of this important to me? I got 3 places we're going to read. This is really important, folks. I told you I was going to give you a class on the Sabbath. You are now into prophecy. What? Yeah, prophecy class. Surprise. Exodus 31, verses 12 and 13. Now if you're reading from the NASB, everything I'm going to give you is from the NASB translation. It's got a little subset, the subtitle. It says, the sign of the Sabbath. The sign of the Sabbath. Unfortunately, when I was still following the traditions and teachings of man, I ignored sign. Didn't mean anything to me. Should have been yo, big red flashing lights, pay attention. But it wasn't. It is now. Now the Lord, Yahweh, spoke to Moses, saying, now as for you, speak to the sons of Israel, saying, you must keep my Sabbaths. For this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, so that you may know that I am El Elyon, who sanctifies you. I'm the Elohim who sanctifies you. I'm that God Most High. A couple of quick pointers. Bible Hub will give you, and I linked to that too on the parts of the study guide. They'll give you all the different translations, all under one list. A lot of your current Bible translations, do you have something? You were waving at me, did you? Oh, okay. A lot of your current Bible translations change something here. The Hebrew says, speak to the sons of Israel. A lot of people have translated it just Israel. Big boo-boo. Yes, children of Israel is a little more acceptable. Sons of Israel is a biblical term basically telling you everybody who belongs to Yahweh, not just Hebrews. And this is a problem for us in our world because most of us who read the New Testament, we don't read the Old. That's going to get you in real trouble here because he's talking to us in the modern church right here. If you're going to be a son of Israel, those who struggle with Yahweh, if you're going to belong to his people, be you Hebrew or Gentile, he's talking to you and telling you these are his Sabbaths, not the Jews. And we miss this. This is sign. And we blow right by it and we go to the teachings of men. And in the process, we'll fall smack into the crosshairs of his condemnation. I did not understand this for many decades. I do now. This is where it starts to clarify. I told you prophecy, right? Well, Joe, you just read from the Pentateuch Torah. Okay. Well, if that's the only place where Torah is, then we're going to Ezekiel 20, verses 11 through 13. I gave them my statutes and formed them my ordinances, which, if a person follows them, then he will live by them. Also, I gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, so that they might know that I am El Elyon, God Most High, who sanctifies them. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not walk in my statutes, and they rejected my ordinances, which, if a person follows them, then he will live by them. And they greatly profaned my Sabbaths. Then I resolved to pour out my wrath on them in the wilderness to annihilate them. House of Israel. Anybody watch my show about this one not too long ago? House of Israel is all you Gentiles out there. If you doubt me, come see me. I'll prove it using your scriptures. Now, remember we've talked about Hebrew parallelism and the chiasms and the stepladder up and down. This is Exodus 20, verses 11 through 13, 11, 12, 13. We're about to read from Ezekiel, not Exodus, I'm sorry, Ezekiel 20. We're about to read Ezekiel 20, verses 19, 20, 21, because it's part of a stepladder. You are smack in the middle of a chiasm when you're reading this prophet. So picking up in verse 19, I am Elohim, I am Yahweh, your Elohim, your God, Yahweh, your God. Walk in my statutes and keep my ordinances and follow them. Sanctify my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, so that you may know that I am El Elyon, your God. I am Yahweh, your God. But the children rebelled against me. They did not walk in my statutes, nor were they careful to follow my ordinances, which, if a person follows them, then he will live by them. They profaned my Sabbaths. So I resolved to pour out my wrath on them, to use my anger against them in the wilderness. They were condemned. The northern tribes were condemned for profaning the Sabbaths because it's the sign.
It's a really cool thing. I don't know if you've looked into it, but the word in Hebrew for sign is oath. And if you also look at where else it's translated, it can also mean mark or seal, like the mark of Cain.
You are right in my wheelhouse right now, sister. You are reading the notes. It can mean mark,
It means a lot of things. It's a little,
and it can mean seal. Yes. Did anybody notice in the three passages, whenever Yahweh wants to hammer home a point, not two witnesses, he's going to send you three. He sent us one in the Pentateuch from Moses, and he sends us one in the prophets through Ezekiel. But did anybody notice what he linked his Sabbaths to? He linked them to his Torah, his law. So he linked his law and his Sabbaths, his set-apart times. Is that ringing any bells to anybody just yet? Because I told you we're in prophecy. The law and the times. Anybody remember a prophet that talks specifically about that? If you don't, we'll get to it in a minute.
Going down it, I noticed a trend when you read all those too about idolatry. And if you skip to verse 24, just a little lower than what you were reading, it says in Ezekiel 20:24, because they have not observed my ordinances, but had rejected my statutes, and had profaned my Sabbaths, and their eyes were on the idols of their fathers.
Uh-huh. Does anybody know another name for Baal that might be connected to Sunday? Who is Baal the god of? He's a sun god. If you think there's no connection, you're wrong. So when you worship on Sunday, it was moved. I ran into that. I wrestled with that. I researched that. I kept hearing people tell me it was moved by people in the Holy Roman Catholic Church. Remember, there were 5 Catholic churches. You think of them as all Catholic today because of the Roman Catholic, but all 5 of the original churches were called Catholic, universal. The Romans stole it from the other 4, made it them being the only one. But I was told that they moved it to Sunday to keep in touch with their sun god, and I always dismissed that. No, I've read too much of the Apostolic Fathers now to dismiss it. It's true.
And in the cosmic realm, it's almost like the enemy mocking God. Like, look, I've got them to worship on my day.
Yeah, we're going to come to that in a minute.
It's interesting from the Hebrew language here. In verse 20, it says, "In Kadosh my Sabbath." Kadosh means to set it apart. Okay?
Set apart my Sabbath.
Set it apart. And, as I've been studying this a little bit, Yahweh created the heaven and the earth.
Yes.
Okay? We're going to talk about that today in our Torah portion. So that means that he's outside of heaven and earth. He is set apart from heaven and earth. So that when you see that kadosh set apart, again,
We translate holy usually.
Yes, we translate that as holy, but I think when we translate it as holy, we lose some meaning.
Yes.
Because to set it apart, it's like that, sign thing that you were saying.
Mhm.
It's one of those lights that goes on. And the other part that is interesting here, I'm trying to see where it was at. I know it's,
When he tells you it's set apart or to set it apart, he's telling you it should be separated from the material world.
and then also
You're dealing with part of the spiritual world in the material world.
Yeah, it's right above here where it talks about we usually translate it as keep in English, but it's actually guard.
Yeah, but we covered that the other day.
Yeah.
Keep in Old English
Well, that's
was meant to guard and protect.
That is correct. If you go back to
Yes.
English, but the way we look at it today in modern English, it loses.
Depending on who if you're reading the founding fathers,
Oh, yeah.
they still used keep that way.
Yeah.
Well, we're only separated from them by about 200 years. Everybody thinks 250. No. John Quincy Adams didn't die until right before the Civil War. We forget he was 9 when all of that started back in 76. Okay? He lived way into the future. So our language has been perverted, starting with, if you're in the secular world, it starts with some people called the progressives. But we're not going to get into that. Okay? That's something else. But yes, keep can mean that. And that's one of the problems we have, is that a lot of our translations in English are still holding those older English words' meanings. And the people who are translating our scriptures, they're pretty smart. They understand it. They read it and they go, oh yeah, I know what a keep is. And they use keep because they understand what it means. And they don't always, the little geeks and the pointy heads don't always realize that we might not all understand it that way anymore. So it doesn't always get, one of the reasons I tell you I've started reading, when I just want to read, I started reading an Amplified Bible, because it does say keep, protect, preserve, and guard against, yeah. But a good point. Just like we are hitting in and around, was it Modim or Moedim? Set apart times. So you were talking about how that word can also mean a mark or a sign. Have you all ever seen an ancient covenant that has a seal in the center of it? We can't make these with anything that's in heaven, can we? Why? What would this be? It would be physical, making it a graven image. Can't have that. So how would Yahweh give us a sign? Well, this one shows up better when you got it printed in your hands, but guess what I have here? It's Exodus 20, 2 through 17. In this little section right in the middle, we call that commandment 4 or 5, depending on whether or not you're Protestant or Catholic. That's the commandment to keep the Sabbath. No, actually, this is a representation of a seal. It's got everything that an ancient seal would have. It says, it declares the king's name, a little bit about his domain, a little bit about what he's done to make himself all that glorified, and then what he's going to do for you here. Have you ever read that one here? It starts off with, says at the beginning, verse 2, Exodus 20, I am Yahweh, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. So there's my fame. If I was the king, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to blaspheme here. There's Yahweh's fame. He says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. For 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath of Yahweh, your Elohim. On it you shall not do any work, you or your sons or your daughter, your male slave or your female slave, or your cattle or your resident who stays with you. He just told you who his kingdom is. Now, in the ancient times, the kingdom, that his realm would be a nation. Well, I'm sorry, but Yahweh's kingdom is without borders. So he just told you who his kingdom is. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything that is in them. Here's another thing about his great works. And he rested on the seventh day. For that reason, Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. There's what he's going to do for you, made it set apart. This is a representation of a seal. We'll say, no, Joe, if you take that out of there, you no longer have 10 commandments. Most of our translations jam 2 of these commandments together to make sure they have 10. Well, I've separated it out for you. Number 1, you shall have no other Elohim before me, no other gods. You shall not make for yourself an idol. Da, 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 da. You shall not worship nor serve them. Da, 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 da. You shall not take the name of Yahweh in vain. There's 4. Honor your father and mother. 5. You shall not murder. 6. You shall not commit adultery. 7. You shall not steal. 8. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. 9. You shall not covet your neighbor's house or other goods. 10. So if I put it all in shall and shall nots, I have 11 commandments if I count remember the Sabbath as a commandment. But if I count it as a seal, a sign, or a mark, which is the same word, guess what I have? I have a spiritual representation of this. And this will be the sign. This is why my group came here, because William told me about this. I thought he was nuts. I went to prove him wrong, and lo and behold, I lost. That's your sign. That's your mark. If you're not keeping Sabbath, you don't belong to him. Say, Joe, that's awful presumptuous. If you're not keeping Sabbath, I don't belong to him? What did Yeshua tell the Samaritan woman at the well when she started talking about worshiping in the spirit and everything else? He said, you Samaritans don't know who you worship. Why did he tell her they didn't know who they worshiped? They had changed the Torah, including the Sabbath. Which is idolatry. Oh, thank you, brother. I know we're on track because you just set me up. Psalm 19, starting in verse 7. Folks, I'm not going to put the sacred names into this one. This would be too hard for me to do it right now on the fly. So just bear with me. This is an NASB translation. You know this should be saying Yahweh in most places, but I'm just going to stick with reading this because I forgot to change it before I printed it, and I don't think I could keep everyone perfect, so my apologies. The law of the Lord is perfect, restoring the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. Parallelism. The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoiced in the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlighten the eyes. Parallelism. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true. They are righteous altogether. They are more desirable than gold, yes, than much pure gold, sweeter also than honey and dripping of the honeycomb. Moreover, your servant is warned by them. In keeping them there is great reward. Who can discern his errors? Acquit me of hidden faults. Also keep your servant back from presumptuous sins. Let them not rule over me, then I will be innocent, and I will be blameless of great wrongdoing. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Yahweh, my rock and my redeemer. I thought that was Yeshua that is the rock and the redeemer. I thought Yahweh created the heavens and the earth, and he created the Sabbath. And yet we're told by Yeshua, he creates the Sabbath for man, not Yahweh. He's the rock and the redeemer. And then we're also told in the New Testament that all things that were created by and through Yeshua. And yet we're told that the world was made by Yahweh. Almost like there's a deliberate mixing of identity. Now, those passages cannot be understood they're of like kind character in mind. No, those passages are all saying, I did it. No, I did it. No, I did it. The only way you keep from breaking scripture there is if they're one and the same, which causes trouble for those of us who come out of the Catholic traditions. Trinity, time for another class. But I want you to see, we just ran smack into it in the Old Testament. It says, in the Hebrew, it does say, Yahweh, my rock and redeemer. Now, what was I just reading Psalm 119 for? Torah, 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 Torah. And I don't mean Torah, Torah, Torah in Japan fighting Pearl Harbor. the law and his precepts. Leviticus 23, 1 through 4. Laws of the holy days. It says, Yahweh spoke again to Moses, saying, speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, the Lord, Yahweh's appointed times, which you shall proclaim as holy convocations, set apart gatherings. My appointed times are these, Modim. For 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh day there is a Sabbath of complete rest, a holy convocation. You shall not do any work. It is a Sabbath to the Lord, to Yahweh, in all your dwellings. These are the appointed times, Modim, of Yahweh, holy convocations, which you shall proclaim at times and appointed for them. Why is all this important in dealing with the Sabbath? If you're keeping Sunday and you've done away with Torah, pay attention. Daniel 7, verse 25. And he will speak against the Most High and wear down the saints of the highest one, and he will intend to make alterations in the times and in the law, and they will be handed over to him for a time, times, and half a time. What is the prince who is to come going to try and do? Change Torah, and he's going to try and change the set apart times. He's going to try and change the Sabbath and the feasts. Where has he succeeded? In the Christian, Catholic, and Protestant churches. If he succeeded there, guess who you are under control of? The prince who is to come. And this, when I understood this, I was like, okay, William, thank you very much for being a good and faithful servant. And we had to leave our church that we were in. And I asked that pastor we left one time face to face in his office, when was the Sabbath changed in the scriptures? And he said, never. I said, why are you still meeting on Sunday? He said, because if I don't, I will lose my church. If we don't kill this man, we will lose our nation. Caiaphas. The Sabbaths are important, and it's more than just Sunday worship or Sabbath, seventh-day worship. It's important because it's prophetic. It's the sign or the mark or the seal.
But this is so good to talk on, because Saturday to Sunday is only the tip of the spear. And as you plunge that spear deeper into the heart, you replace his holy days with Easter and Christmas and Halloween and everything. And then you start replacing lamb with ham, and you start replacing, it's the tip of the spear, and which is why I think or in the New Testament, he said, keep Sabbath.
Yes.
Just keep Sabbath, and we'll teach you everything else. Start with Sabbath.
Mm-hmm. If you read your New Testament, the book of Acts, it's either 23 or 27 times it tells us the apostles kept Sabbath after the ascension. If he changed it, why are they still keeping the Sabbath? Well, it talks about them meeting on the Lord's Day. Fine, there's no reason we can't meet on any day of the week we want to. But it wasn't the Sabbath. They were just meeting to be together again.
It's not that big of a deal.
There's also a fallacy in there when they say the Lord's Day, and assuming it's first day of the week. That's not what the Bible says.
I know he did not rise on Sunday, but they don't understand how to keep time. No. If you've done away with Torah, you don't know how to keep time properly. And I don't mean that as an accusation. You've lost how to keep time the biblical way. So if you're not counting the days properly, it's when it says he's 3 full days and nights in the ground, that's a prophetic term. It means 24-hour periods. He was 72 hours in the ground. So he could not have died on Good Friday.
You mean Good Friday ain't so good?
Nope.
The math don't work.
The math doesn't work. And he would have risen at that in the Hebrew mind, sunset, when the days, for us, the days change at stroke of midnight. For them, the days kind of slide from one into the other. There's not a set, this is the moment. Okay, there's kind of like, if you read the rabbis, there's about a half-hour period there that's both days at the same time. And that's when he rose, right when the priest was doing the wave offering. Why would that be important? Because he's first fruit. That's what the wave offering is, first fruit. All of the feasts connect to Messiah's mission here on earth in the flesh. They're prophetic. If I throw away the Sabbaths and I throw away the prophecies that promise your Messiah, how do you know he's your Messiah? Sabbath is really important, folks. This is a real, boy, I can't wait to tackle this one on the show one day.
Your numbers.
And that's where the Christian church really messes up Paul, because the plethora of Paul's writings were so that the people could keep the Sabbath and be in the synagogue so they can listen to the Torah, so they can learn more of it, so they could keep it better.
Yes.
That's what the majority of his writings were all about.
Now, to get back to what Bonnie was telling us about with the Hebrew meaning of the words, Revelation 7:3 and 9:4 talks about Yahweh's people are going to be sealed on their forehead, marked on their forehead. Well, that's in Greek. Ezekiel 9 is all about telling the angel destroyers to hold up until my servant goes through the city and marks all my people on their forehead with the sign, with the seal. And then in Jeremiah 25:9, we see what's going on there.